to our Did You Know for today, but first we're going to do our fun fact for this week. Please go with me in your Bibles to the book of 1 Samuel chapter 9 verse 2. This scripture says, Kish had a son named Saul, a choice young man and handsome. Among all the Israelites there was not a man more handsome than he, and he was a head taller than any of the other people. Imagine that. I find that so interesting that the first king that God chose for his nation Israel was a man that was handsome and good looking, fleshly, out of not inside but outside, a good young man which was handsome and attractive, and that he was one head taller than anybody else. Now, to me, that is very interesting. So this is our fun fact for today. In our Did You Know today, I want to talk to you about the Abgar legend. In early Christian times, there was a popular story that Jesus wrote letters and exchanged writings with King Abgar the fifth, Ukama of Osruin, and whose capital was in Edessa. And that was a Mesopotamian city on the northern fringe of the Syrian plateau. Now, according to this story, this king of Edessa was afflicted with a life-threatening leprosy. He was busy dying from leprosy, but he heard of the miracles that Jesus did. And so he wrote a letter to Jesus acknowledging that Jesus was divine, that he had a divine mission, and then he asked Jesus so that he may come and cure him, and therefore he invited Jesus to come to Edessa as a safe refuge also from the persecution that Jesus was going through in Jerusalem. And in his reply, in a letter apparently that Jesus allegedly wrote, Jesus commended the king for his faith in him, and he expressed regret that his mission in life would not allow him to visit him at that time, but he promised that after he would ascend to heaven, he would send a disciple to visit Edessa, where the king is, and that the disciple will come and heal the king. It is said that the king converted to Christianity immediately. Well, wouldn't you do the same if you get a letter from Christ? Whether this is true, we don't know, but there are proof apparently of these letters, that there are correspondence between Christ and Abgar, the king of Edessa. And there's also a translation of these two letters which is portrayed by Eusebius, the church father. And here is a picture of those letters. Have a look on the screen. Apparently there is a form of this story that existed in the Doctrine of Adai, which is a Syriac document containing suggestions of primitive Christianity in Edessa at that time. The letters, probably composed early in the 4th century, have been considered spurious since the 5th century, but they were translated from Syriac into Greek and also Armenian, into Latin and Arabic and other ancient languages, which was clear evidence of the popularity of that story, the letters that Jesus and the king wrote to each other. Father Eusebius wrote in the History of the Church 300 years later that he examined both these letters from King Abgar and the response from Jesus, which were preserved in the records office of Edessa. Eusebius translated these letters from Syriac to Greek and published both of them in full. Here on the screen you will see an extraction of the letter that Abgar wrote to Jesus and the response that King Abgar received back from Jesus. Now, I don't believe that Jesus wrote this letter physically with his hand, but he most probably used one of his disciples to write the letter and just send it by someone to take it through, because at that time they didn't have emails and, you know, all the electronic stuff that we had. Somebody had to take this letter personally in their hand, climb on a donkey, put some food for I don't know how long, and go all the way to Edessa to go and give this letter to the King Abgar. Well, At about 30 years after Jesus died, and after the resurrection or his ascension, the Apostle Thomas dispatched Thaddeus to visit Edessa. So this disciple Thaddeus had been one of the 72 disciples that was commissioned by Christ in the middle of his ministry that is mentioned in the Gospel of Luke. You remember that Jesus sent them out 2 by 2. Thaddeus visited Edessa, and it is also recorded in other documents, and also Father Eusebius reported finding this in the archives of Edessa. And after arriving and preaching in Edessa, this disciple Thaddeus was quickly summoned before Abgar the king, and he was convinced that Jesus sent this disciple to him because Jesus promised in the letter that he will send somebody to heal him. And so Abgar the king believed that Jesus fulfilled his promise to him. Thaddeus, the disciple, told Abgar that if he believed in the message of Jesus, that he is the healer, his prayers would be answered. And Abgar then responded that he believed so much that he wanted to take his army and destroy the Jews for having killed Jesus, and only restrained himself due to fear of the Romans. But the disciple Thaddeus responded that what had happened to Jesus and his crucifixion was the will of God, and it had to happen for our salvation. Then he laid hands upon Abgar the king, and he was miraculously cured of his leprosy sickness. Thaddeus then preached in Edessa, winning some converts, which formed the beginning of the first Christian church in that city of Edessa. It was also said that Abgar, the king of Edessa, closed down the Greco-pagan temples after that, and he got rid of all the idols and the pagan temples and all the stuff that shouldn't have been there, and he covered up the statues of the pagan gods. And he also kept other letters from the Christian king, which he reported were preserved in Edessa archives. In one letter, Abgar wrote to the Roman Emperor Tiberius to tell him about Jesus and his miracles. And apparently, Abgar invited Tiberius to convert to Christianity as well. Tiberius replied to the king that he had already heard about this Jesus from a letter sent by Pontius Pilate, and that Pontius had submitted Jesus to the Roman Senate for possible addition to the recognized Roman pantheon of gods. However, the Roman Senate rejected the claim for lack of evidence. But in a letter to another king, Abgar expressed his regrets that he was unable to send Jesus to him, but suggested that he seeks out the apostle Simon, who was in Persia at that time. And he tells the same in a letter to the king of Parthia as well. Now, after the death of Abgar, the king of Edessa, a power struggle took place between Abgar's sons. He had 2 sons, Ananaun and his nephew Sanadraug. And they both converted to Greek paganism under the pressure of the people. But Sanadraug had Thaddeus murdered, the disciple that came to King Edessa and healed him. So his own son killed the disciple who healed his father. So Thaddeus was murdered while preaching in Edessa. And also the daughter of King Abgar, Satokt, refused to renounce Christianity, and she was also martyred and killed. A disciple of Thaddeus by the name of Artius was also killed by Ananaun, the other son of King Edessa, after he refused to make a gold headdress of the opposite king. Sanadraug defeated Ananaun. So you see here now the one brother killed the other one and killed all Abgar's direct descendants. But Abgar's wife, Helene, fled to Jerusalem, where she organized food aid to the poor families during the famine from that time. And no king of Osrhoene or Edessa region would convert to Christianity until Abgar the 9th converted in 2001 after Christ. Moses of Corine and the doctrine of Adai both claimed that Abgar's courier painted a portrait of Jesus while in Jerusalem, and they brought it back to Edessa to the king. Moses reported that it could still be seen in Edessa today. Evagrius Scholasticus, writing in about 600 after Christ, reported that the image was miraculous and it was not made with human hands. This was actually, according to them, a real portrait of Jesus Christ. And it was used by the people of the city as a sort of talisman to help light a fire in the mine and defeat a Persian siege during 544 after Christ. We're going to put a picture on the screen for you so that you can see what this portrait of Jesus looked like. The two late medieval copies of this image of Edessa said to be Jesus of Nazareth. On the left image you can see on the screen is the Holy Face from Genoa from the late 14th century, and on the right is the picture of the Holy Face of San Silvestro, dated 1517. There is no doubt that an image of Jesus that originated from Edessa existed. It was long believed to have been formed miraculously and came to be called the Mandelio, or image of Edessa, but it was an image, according to legend, of Jesus Christ, our Messiah. It was brought to Constantinople in 944 after death of Christ. And the Mandalion, the face of Jesus, appeared in the St. Catherine's Monastery on the Sinai Peninsula. Unfortunately, after the attack of Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade in 1204, it was brought back to Western Europe, and then, strangely enough, it disappeared. We only have the two late medieval copies of this image of Jesus that is really today in existence, as shown on the screen. There are, however, recent imitations that they found these two again throughout the Orthodox Greek world today. There's a story of King Abgar who corresponded with Jesus of Nazareth, and it has wide currency in the Orthodox churches and in Armenia, which was the first official Christian nation. King Abgar V is currently featured on the Armenian 100,000 dram banknote. There's a picture of that on the screen. Now, what I find so interesting about this story is that here we have our Messiah Jesus. I don't believe that he basically went to go and sit down under a tree on a rock and took a piece of paper and wrote something down. I think he just received a letter from the king, and one of his disciples read it for him, and then he maybe said, write back and say, I cannot come today, but after I have gone up to heaven and ascended, I will send one of my disciples to come and heal you. And which happened because Thaddeus was sent and the king got healed. I find this so amazing. And do you know, there's so little Christians that know about this story, which is why I wanted to share that with you on our Did You Know for today. I trust that you enjoyed that, and I hope that you were blessed. And until next week, look out for something so interesting. You will be so very, very blessed. May God bless you. We are praying for you. We are keeping you in our prayers day and night. We are praying for all our subscribers and their families, their children, their grandchildren, their brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers. We are praying for you. I need you to know that. If you have any prayer requests, you are welcome to send that to our email, which appears on the screen, or phone us on the number that's there, and we will pray for you either on the phone or do an audio prayer and send that through for you. That's all I have for you now. May God bless you. Shalom.